Hello out there. We're on the air. Welcome back. Good morning. Happy hump day, everybody. Better make sure my microphone is on this morning so we don't have to sit through 2 minutes of lip reading again today. It is Wednesday. It is a beautiful day. It's a great day to be alive, a great time to be alive in history. And it's good to see some friendly faces in the chat this morning. We got Johnny. We got rock and roll. The show must go on. It must. We had some speed bumps this morning in terms of getting ready for the show. But like usual, we got it done. We are here. So let's make sure that we got everything loaded. We got a good show today. I've been wanting to do this show for a long time. And I wasn't really sure on the exact message I wanted to portray here in terms of why I sold my rental house for Bitcoin. I just feel like there's a lot of people in this spot right now. Typically, historically, this has been, if you're somebody who's accumulated some wealth through the years in the fiat world, the thing to do was kind of to buy a rental house and to make a little bit more every month. You can grow your assets. It seemed like the most foolproof way to do it. But with Bitcoin now, and with everything that's happening in the world, I'm not sure that that's the best strategy anymore. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. So this is kind of for people who have a rental house and have been maybe thinking about buying Bitcoin instead and selling your rental house, or just for people who are into Bitcoin and want a little bit more conviction in terms of why I think that so many people are going to start jumping over from the real estate world into Bitcoin. And I've already seen it myself in my little world here. I've seen a few people in real life who are going to be trading their rental homes, vacation homes for Bitcoin. It just makes sense. If you look at where we are and everything that's happened, it just makes sense. It's just logical. So that's what we're going through today. It's going to be a good one. Good morning, Dan, and good morning, Rick. Have you smashed the like yet? That's a good question. Let's make sure, let's see what's going on over on zap.stream quickly here. Make sure we're live. I didn't update the title over there though. Did I? No, I didn't. Let's change this on the go. How do I do that? There we go. So like I said, this is going to be a show that I've been wanting to do for a while. So shout out to Daniel over in zap.stream. I see a nice zap from him, 121 sats. Good morning. We are living in the future. We are. Crypto Heathens over there. Daniel's over there. Leith is over there. And our guy, Zombie, aka Jose, is over there. Good morning, everybody. And forgot to say this, but this is the Daily Bitcoin Journey, a show about Bitcoin every single morning at 9 a.m. Eastern Time, where the focus is on actionable and logical discussion for Bitcoiners and for future Bitcoiners. That's what we're here for. That is why we're here. And it's important. This is something that this is a little bit off topic here, but I think it's important to talk about. So every morning, I think before you do whatever it is you do every day, whether that's going to work, whether that's running a business, or whatever you do, it's very important to ask yourself why. Ask yourself why you're doing that. And if you don't have a great reason for that, it might be time to consider something else. And so there's a lot of reasons why I started this channel. I just think it was the perfect time to be doing it. Honestly, there's just so many people who need an actual conversation about Bitcoin instead of looking at the price, instead of looking at charts, instead of people blowing smoke and trying to sell it in a very negative way to a lot of people. People don't like being sold to. And so if you can just talk things through logically, using common sense, using actual data, have a conversation about it, it goes a long way. And I think that that's what people miss when they're considering getting into Bitcoin is they hop onto Google, they hop onto YouTube, they see a bunch of weirdos talking about Bitcoin, a bunch of crazy predictions, and it just immediately turns them off. And I understand that. So the why for this is because we've been living in a very broken monetary system for a lot of years. And it's time to change that. It's time to change that. We finally have the tools. We finally have the network to be able to do that. And that's what we're going to do. So we've lived through a lot of bullshit in the last 50 years since we went off the gold standard. And a lot of people don't know what happened there. They feel it now, but they don't know what happened. So it is important to understand that our money is broken. There is a way around it, and it's called Bitcoin. So that's what we're talking about today. That's why we're here. Kieran is over in the chat. Welcome, my friend. And Nick, good morning. Those must have been some nostr links. Rick, I didn't smash it, but I hit it hard. Okay, let's get some metrics here. Start the show. Is everything running okay? Yeah, it is. Computer's running hot. So we're currently at block height 838,610, which means there are what? Oh, 838,611. Never mind. How many blocks is that? That would be, why am I having a hard time doing math here? Anyways, the halving comes at 840,000 blocks. That should be 1,389 blocks. I don't know. We'll go with that. So it's still projected, I believe, to be, we'll double check that too, April 20th. It's a great resource, timechaincalendar.com. 1389, that was correct. We have not, oh, it changed. It changed. I don't know if you can see that or not at the top, but it says the halving countdown is now scheduled to be April 19th, 2024 at 11:48 p.m. So that's not great news. I was really hoping that it would be on the Saturday and we could do a show and watch it happen live. Maybe we'll do a Friday night show. That might work too. I don't know how many people will be up. I'm guessing all the Bitcoiners will be up. So maybe we'll do a Friday night show. We'll have some beers. That might even be better than Saturday morning. The perfect scenario here would be that the new halving epoch starts on 4/20, April 20th at like 12:05 a.m. That would be the perfect scenario. So we could do a Friday night show. We could have some beers. We could watch it happen, and it would still fall on 4/20. It seems like it just has to. Holy, that's taken up a lot of my internet. Okay, back to this mempool.space. If you are transacting on the Bitcoin layer 1 this morning, fees have kind of been all over the place. Yesterday, they spiked up. I see 2 blocks ago, it was 41 sats per VByte, but it's back down to 16 sats per VByte now. So that's kind of the average. Kind of the average there. And I'm somebody who believes that will be the fees for a very long time, about 10, 20, 30 sats per VByte. It'll just cost a lot more in fiat terms in that time. So the price today did drop a little bit. We got $69,483. Nice. 1 year ago today, you could have purchased one Bitcoin for $29,734 US. And 4 years ago today, you could have got one for $6,877 US. The Moscow time today, $1 US will get you 1,466 sats. And in Canada today, the price is still over 90,000, 92,382 Canadian dollars. The Moose Jaw time, which is the Canadian equivalent to Moscow time, 1,075 sats for $1 Canadian dollar. The deal of a lifetime, right? We know that. We know that. That's why we're here. Lucas is in the house. Good morning, my friend. Bodie, good morning. Tommy D, my man. Scott says, good morning, y'all. Happy to see a dip this morning so I can scoop up more sats. Yeah, I knew it was going to dip because I ended up buying some Bitcoin on Monday when I went to the post office. So you can always count on whenever you buy Bitcoin, the price usually falls the next day. So the good thing about it, though, is in 10 years from now, we're not going to give a shit if we paid $69,000, $72,000, or $169,000 for Bitcoin. So Time. Just need time. Let's Ballsy Golf is also over in the Zap.stream chat. Good morning, my friend. Good morning. So let's kick off with some news today. Actually, I wanted to share this. This was something with everything that's happening in the world right now. We talk about the real estate, we talk about the stock market, we talk about Bitcoin and how it is the best place to be parking your cash right now. And we have to keep in mind that even though we go through this next couple of years, things are going to get pretty bad for the economy. Things are bad right now, and they're not going to get any better than they are today. For most people, for those people who are living in the fiat world. And so I posted this on Nostr today, but I said, if it wasn't this bad, we wouldn't need Bitcoin. But it is, and we do. So think about that. Every time you're worrying about things in the fiat world, I know that there's a lot of, prices are going up of everything. You go to the grocery store, you go to the gas station, your energy bill's going up, everything's going up if you're living in the fiat world. But what we're trying to do here, the whole purpose of the show is to help people understand Bitcoin and help people make that transition from the fiat world where things are going batshit into the Bitcoin world where everything's going down in price, which is going to tie nicely into today's show. Nick says, why live in Manitoba when you could live in Alberta? That's a good question. I ask myself that a lot. I love Alberta. I think there's two places I would live if I wasn't here. Number one, Nashville. Number two, Alberta. Love Alberta. It's just, I don't know. My family's here. My friends are here. This house is here. I love this place that I live here. And the majority of my day is spent talking to people in other places anyway. So other than the taxes and things costing so much and shitty roads here in Manitoba, it's a pretty good place to live. But if things change, and they probably will in life, I could end up very easily in Alberta. Very easily. So the news here today. Make sure we got everything. We didn't miss anything. Yeah. Let's start with this one. This is an interesting one. This is a very interesting one. The Bitcoin news we go through every morning. We check on what's happening around the world in Bitcoin. And this segment is sponsored by our friends over at Bitcoin News, the best place to find news about Bitcoin, other than the daily Bitcoin journey, because I cover all the good stuff here. But if you want to stay in tune, if you want to stay up to date with everything that's happening, make sure to follow Bitcoin News on Twitter, on their YouTube channel. And it's just a great resource for everything happening in the world of Bitcoin. They also have a really good website. Maybe I'll pop that up here quickly. They have a great website. Make sure to bookmark it, check it in the morning, see what's going on. You have to stay. The thing about Bitcoin and the thing about everything in life is that it really does pay to pay attention. And so if your life is in Bitcoin, you have to stay up to date. And I mean, that's why the majority of you are watching shows like this. But it's important to have resources like Bitcoin News. So this is their website. They got all the breaking news every single day. Plus, if you want to dive into some things like the Lightning, like mining, some videos, it's got a ticker up here, live ticker showing everything, the price, the change, difficulty, hash rate. It's a great resource. So shout out to Bitcoin News for sponsoring the show and for supporting the little channels here, the little guy. Rock and Roll says, always have a plan B. That's great advice. Have to. Which in this case is Bitcoin. So this is some very interesting news. This says that a Japanese firm called Metaplanet buys 1 billion worth, 1 billion, what's Japanese yen? No, that's Chinese. I don't know. 6.5 million in Bitcoin, mirroring the MicroStrategy's strategy. The company's shares jumped 90% following the announcement. Wow. Wow. So we have MicroStrategy. They're kind of the pioneers who are taking on debt, buying Bitcoin. As the price of Bitcoin goes up, their company becomes more valuable. They issue more debt. They buy more Bitcoin. It is a brilliant strategy. And I don't think that anybody else is going to do what Michael Saylor and MicroStrategy have done, but we're going to see companies like Metaplanet implement this. So we've seen MicroStrategy. 2 weeks ago, we saw that gold company. What was it called? Myra or something? No, I don't know. Some resources company. It was a gold company. They announced that they were buying like $1.7 billion worth of Bitcoin, and their share price went up like 1,800% the next day. It turned out to be just a big pump and dump bullshit. But that's the kind of things that companies are going to start noticing this stuff. And Metaplanet announced that they were buying Bitcoin, and their shares jumped 90% following the announcement. So we'll have to keep an eye out for today what's going on in Metaplanet. I'll be watching it. It's very interesting. Like I said, I don't think that anybody's going to be able to fully utilize Bitcoin like Michael Saylor did, but there are still going to be some companies who, if they do it right, can take advantage of this. And probably in the next decade, every single company on earth is going to be holding Bitcoin on their balance sheet. They might not be doing this strategy where they're taking on debt and buying Bitcoin and repeating that over and over again, but every company will hold Bitcoin on their balance sheet. So that's interesting. Very interesting. Let's take a question. Let's take a question from the chat here. SY Daily Diverse says, question, if I have secret words, then I can just physically break the wallet. I don't need to keep the physical wallet cold. Don't need it at all, right? I have secret words and a long-term keeper. That is correct. That is correct. So, and that's kind of the beauty of Bitcoin. And we're going to be talking about real estate today. And one of the things I'm going to talk about is the flexibility within Bitcoin compared to real estate. So let's say that you live in a country, let's use Canada as an example. Let's say that things go really south here in the next couple of years. Let's say that Trudeau wins again in 2025 and things just go psycho in Canada. And I want to leave. I want to leave Canada. I don't want to be here anymore. I don't want to be contributing to the system. I don't want to continue to be stomped down by our government and live in this absolutely insane world of government overreach. So I decide that I want to pack up and move to El Salvador. Think about the process there in terms of selling your rental house. If Canada is in that bad of a shape, is there going to be a whole bunch of people who are wanting to buy that rental house? Probably not. So you're going to have to find a buyer. You're going to have to find a realtor. You're going to have to find a lawyer. It's probably going to take some time for you to sell it. You might not get what you think it's worth because you want to get out of the country as soon as you can. So you're not very flexible. You're not very agile. With Bitcoin, though, as this comment says, you don't even need to have a device in your pocket when you leave, when you hop on an airplane and fly to El Salvador. You don't need to have a device. All you need to have is 12 words in your head. And nobody, no matter how many scanning tools they have at the airport, how many security guards they have at the airport, nobody can extract those 12 words out of your head. And that's a big deal. So this is a great question. It's a great point. It ties very well into what we're talking about today. And I don't know, what's a better place to be parking your life savings? I don't know. It's interesting. Tommy D says 6 million USD equals a 1.4 billion market cap increase. So that must be based on the multiplier, Bitcoin multiplier. Thinking so. That has a 10,000 return on investment in 9 hours. And that's one company in Japan called Metaplanet. So think about when the Middle East countries start announcing that they're buying Bitcoin, billions of dollars worth of Bitcoin, maybe trillions. Jason is in the house. Good morning, my friend. Yeah, he says Alberta. Alberta is a pretty good place. That's where I would be. I have a relative who lives in Alberta, and I love it there. It's pretty much just an extension of Montana. If you look at the landscape of especially southern Alberta, I mean, it basically is. All there is just an invisible border there calling Montana and Alberta. but it's the exact same landscape as Montana. Beautiful place, beautiful people there too. And I'm a huge fan. I don't advocate for any politicians. I don't like any politicians, but I will say that Danielle Smith is one of my top 3 for sure. She is in my top 3 politicians, even though I don't trust any of them. I haven't seen any reason to doubt her yet. Edwin's in the house. Good morning, Edwin. Adam. Good morning, my friend. Hopefully everybody's checked out Adam's new channel, YouTube channel. If you haven't yet, you should. Maybe Adam can throw what it's called again in the chat. I forget what it is. Smiles and push-ups. No, I forget. Okay, next piece of news here. Speaking of people jumping into the Bitcoin, let's watch this short clip. Okay, let me get this off of here. Let me get this off of here. Okay, so this is interesting. So I don't know, we're in April now, April 10th. I don't know how well your memory is, but if you remember back in January when we were talking about the ETFs, there was a bunch of, it was all over the news. The ETFs were getting approved. There was a bunch of people making predictions. How much is this going to move the market? How much Bitcoin can these ETFs actually accrue? How much are they going to accrue? And the estimates all over the place. I remember listening to people saying that there was going to be maybe $5 billion that flow into Bitcoin from stock market, from Wall Street. 5 billion. That was what some people were anticipating. They thought that was a high conservative pick. So we've seen much different than that, obviously, here. There's the channel right there, sweating and smiling together. If you need some positivity, if you want to start getting into shape a little bit, very relatable, Adam. It's a good channel. And it's very new. So I'm sure there'll be more to come. DXY, Craig here. Or is it Craig or Crag? Probably Crag. Morning, my friend. And Robert's in the house. Everybody's here this morning. Love to see it. Okay. So here we go. So this is a short clip, 1 minute and 43 seconds. We'll make sure that the sound is okay. I have to make sure here because I hate restarting things. So we got the tab. That's what we want. Okay. So I'm going to mute myself. Let's watch this. This is CoinRoutes chairman Dave Weisberger. The Bitcoin ETFs have been the most successful launch in decades. So let's just hear what he says.
If you rewind the tape to early January, before the Bitcoin ETFs launched, the most aggressive predictions for the kind of investor interest we would get was somewhere between 10 and 15 billion in the first 6 months. In fact, the average is probably about 15 billion for the entire year of 2024. We are way past that. The Bitcoin ETF is now just undeniably the most successful ETF launch in decades. And it wasn't just one. There are multiple Bitcoin ETFs that would have made into the top 5 list over the last decade or so. And that's really a big thing. That shows you just how much untapped demand there is, how many people actually believe in the narrative of Bitcoin as a store of value. But as the knife salesman would say, there's more, David. The fact is that we still haven't even seen the most of the professional RIAs and FAs be able to allocate Bitcoin on behalf of their larger clients because the systems have not allowed that yet. That is just kind of starting now, and we expect it to accelerate in the back half of the year. So we're seeing an enormous amount of demand based upon the narrative that's being, basically being promoted by, I would say, the lead cheerleader is Larry Fink of BlackRock. And BlackRock has done phenomenal in terms of gathering assets. But remember, this was a man who years ago, not too many years ago, was a big skeptic. And now he has joined the ranks of declaring it as going to be the digital store of value, or the base layer of the Internet of money, whichever way you want to look at it. going forward. That has weight.
Okay, so he said 10 or 50 million there. I said 5 billion. I said 5. So before we go any further into that, let's look at this next post here, which ties really well into that. But let's look at BlackRock's. Let's look at what BlackRock currently has that they announced of how much Bitcoin they're holding right now. What do we got here? Just in from the Bitcoin news, the value of BlackRock's Bitcoin holdings jumps to 18 billion. 18 billion from BlackRock right now. That's how much Bitcoin they're holding. So all these experts, all these financial analysts and experts and all the talking heads on TV, they thought that the total for the year of Bitcoin that these ETFs were going to get to was going to be about 10 or 15 billion for 2024. Currently, BlackRock has 18 billion worth of that Bitcoin. Plus you have Fidelity, plus you have 7 other ETFs who are buying as much Bitcoin as they possibly can right now. And so let's just kind of take a little bit deeper dive into this and think about what's happening here. So there's 2 things I want you to think about here. So we know that the ETFs have surpassed the experts, but we know the experts don't really know that a whole lot, especially about Bitcoin. But there's 2 things I want to talk about here. The first one is that I want you to think of your own life. Think about your financial advisor and think about the conversations that you've had with people. If you have a financial advisor, are they somebody who has been talking about Bitcoin to you? Have they reached out, sent an email saying, hey, there's this new Bitcoin ETF here. It's been doing pretty good, better than most of our other assets. Maybe you should consider putting a little bit, maybe 2%, 3% into your portfolio. Has your financial advisor said that? Have any of your friends talked about their financial advisors saying that to them? I highly doubt it. So there's a shitload of investment that's already flowed into Bitcoin. And I don't think we've even scratched the surface in terms of how much is still going to come. So that's one aspect of it. And the other part is that think about where we are right now in the Bitcoin cycle. And with BlackRock, and all these other companies who are buying as much Bitcoin as they possibly can, the majority of that Bitcoin is actually flowed out of Grayscale. So that's why we've seen so much come into Bitcoin, so many of these ETFs buying up the Bitcoin without really seeing too much of a price movement yet. So historically, leading up to a halving, it drops. We've seen a huge drop right before the halving historically. This time we hit an all-time high. The majority of people in the investment world, I would say 99% of financial advisors haven't had a conversation with their clients about Bitcoin. So we've already hit an all-time high. We still have so much money within that system to be allocated to Bitcoin still. And eventually Grayscale is going to run out of Bitcoin. So those 3 things alone, I think that most people are significantly underestimating what's going to happen here as more people come in, as less Bitcoin are mined every 10 minutes. And as Grayscale runs out of Bitcoin. All 3 of those things are going to happen at once. We're in for some crazy times here. We're in for some very, very crazy times here. It's exciting though. So that's kind of the news for today. That's what I wanted to get through. Pretty good, half an hour in. Okay. So with that in mind, let's talk about this. Let's talk about my rental house. And I'm just going to set up this other spreadsheet here that I have for visual purposes throughout. Let me find it right here. So back in 2000 and let's say 15, let's call it that. Back in 2015, I was living in the city. I was working, actually, I'll take this off for now. I was working at my job as a CPA with an accounting firm in the city. And I started to build up a little bit of extra cash. So I was earning more than I was spending. So I thought, well, I might as well put some of this money into real estate. That's what I heard Robert Kiyosaki talk about. I read The Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and how, it seemed like a really no-brainer to instead take on debt, buy assets, let those assets go up over time, and slowly pay down that debt while you're accumulating assets. And I think for the most part, I don't know that it ever was a great strategy, to be honest with you. I was going to say it worked for a while, but I don't know. I think that we've kind of been misled in our lives in terms of real estate and in terms of especially rental houses. So my story here is that I had a rental house. Let's say I paid $200,000 for it. I had it for 5 years. I had it rented the entire time. And so I didn't have too many bad things that happened. I had a bad water issue. One of the toilets backed up. One of the tenants poured fucking dog food into the toilet, or cat litter, one of the two, whatever it was. Plugged the toilet, backed up the whole thing. It was minus 40 degrees in Manitoba. I'll never forget that day. Had to call up my buddy. We went to the house. We took out all the flooring, all the carpets. It was soaking full of water. Minus 40 outside. We just left it out there. It froze. And then, of course, the next week we had to figure things out. But that's the kind of stuff you run into as a landlord. There wasn't much. That was kind of like the worst of it. I had a couple bad tenants, but that was kind of the worst of it. And so in 2020, when I started looking into Bitcoin, I started realizing that this seems like a much better place to put my life's energy than this rental house. So I sold my rental house. I sold it and I bought Bitcoin. Unfortunately for me, I bought it at the very top of the market. So I made some money on the house and I put it into Bitcoin at the peak. And so probably if I would have waited, like I said, 2 or 3 months after selling the house to buy Bitcoin, I would have been in a much better financial position today, much better. But I mean, when these things happen, the reason I sold my rental house is because Bitcoin went from like 10,000 to 69,000 in a year or whatever it was. And I was like, okay, well, it's going to keep going up and up and up. So I'm going to sell this house. I'm going to buy into Bitcoin. And of course, as soon as I did that, dropped for the next 4 years. So that's my experience with it. But do I regret it? Absolutely not. I haven't regretted it for one single day of my life. You know why? Because I haven't sold that Bitcoin yet. And we just talked about what's coming here in Bitcoin over these next few years. And so, that's kind of where we're at right now, but absolutely zero regrets with that. So I want to talk about 5 different things here. I want to keep this kind of brief for the most part. And I think it's just going to create some conversation. Like I said, if you do have any people in your house, whether that's your parents, your friend, your spouse, if they own a rental house and you've been trying to convince them to buy Bitcoin instead, this is the video that you're going to want to show them. So first thing here, I'm going to talk about 5 different things kind of as a whole. Number 1 is inflation, the real price of assets. Number 2 is tenants and having to deal with other people, and most often not the best people. Number 3 is the cost going up while rents pretty much have to stay the same. Number 4 is flexibility. We talked about this earlier in the show when there was a question there about the 12 words. So flexibility, and then the worldwide market. So those are kind of the 5 themes that I want to be focused on today. And I'm going to dive into a little bit further here. But Joseph says, what can one Bitcoin do for you? In terms of what? Do you want to look at it? Do you want to take pictures of it? Or do you want to hold your life's energy there? Because what I'm going to show you right now, actually, we'll start with this. This is what one Bitcoin can do for you. It's the best place to hold your purchasing power over time. So that's essentially what I want to start with here. This is kind of the key. And this is something that I've talked to people, I've met with clients, and this is the thing that really pushes them over the top in terms of understanding Bitcoin, because you can see it. Most people feel it right now, but once you actually see it and see what's happened here, it changes your whole dynamic and your whole lens in which you look through. So let's look at this. Let's talk about where I bought in. So this is where I bought my rental house, 2015. The average home price in Canada was $413,000. The price of one Bitcoin was $380. And so this is what it would have cost me in Bitcoin to buy a house, 1,000 Bitcoin. I sold it right here. $2021. The average home in Canada was $688,000. The price of Bitcoin was $50,000. And that would have cost me 13 Bitcoin to buy that house. So you can see the difference here. And this is, I think, that most people can really relate to this, because they've seen the prices of houses go up over the last 10, 20 years significantly in dollars. And that's kind of the world that we live in. And that's what that's the lens that everybody historically has looked through. They see that their house has gone from 413,000 to 688,000. So mine was about 200,000 and it went to say 250,000. So that's a pretty good investment. Plus, if you're doing things right, you should be making some money from your tenants. You should be paying down your debt. But that's if you look at the average returns over real estate, it's not really that high. So your price went from 413 to 688,000. But look at Bitcoin. That house cost you $1,000 or 1,000 Bitcoin back in 2015. And in 2021, it cost you 13 Bitcoin. And this is real estate, but you can look at any other asset on earth and use this exact same. If you measure things in Bitcoin instead of fiat, you'll realize what's happening here in the world. Everything is falling in comparison to Bitcoin. Everything. So that was, unfortunately, I didn't time it this well. I bought a rental house here instead of Bitcoin. So not ideal for me. That's what I regret, is even buying it. But I didn't have a clue what Bitcoin was back in 2015. So I'm not going to spend too much time living in the what if world. I'm just happy that I got out of it when I did. So that's the first aspect. You have to look at you have to measure things in Bitcoin. When you measure things in Bitcoin, it looks totally different than when you measure things in fiat. Totally different. So that's the first one. And probably the most important one there. And even realtors understand that. I met with a realtor 2 weeks ago, and she totally wrapped her head around what's happening here. House prices are going up, but when you actually measure it in Bitcoin, housing prices are going way down compared to Bitcoin. And so just stop right there and consider the conversation that we have leading up to this about what's coming in Bitcoin. So this is where it's been so far. Imagine what it's going to look like in 2 years from now. Because currently that same house is 11 Bitcoin. And it's going to keep going down and down and down. And probably in 10 years, you might be able to buy a house for half a Bitcoin. If this continues, if this trend continues. And I see absolutely no reason for it not to. So, as Jason says here, your home didn't get 40% better. The money supply inflated by 40%. And that's what most people miss. Homes don't get more valuable. If you put a new hot tub in, or if you do a whole bunch of landscaping, you renovate your kitchen, you put money into it and it becomes more valuable. But just because your house sits there for a while, nothing changed. It didn't become more valuable. The money supply just increased. And that's the paradigm shift. That's the mindset that most people miss. And that's why I wanted to do this video today. So that's the first one, the actual cost of inflation, the cost of the money supply increasing, the cost of our governments taking on more and more debt and us having to pay for that. You look at there was a chart I saw the other day, and if you were born in like 1990 and I think it was 2005, and you look at the US debt clock and how much it says per citizen on there, it's like $220,000 of debt per citizen. And that's just on like the money that they owe to the central banks. That doesn't include the pensions or the healthcare or all that, the unfunded stuff. You're born into this world and you have $220,000 worth of debt on your back from your government. That's not a great place to be. And kids nowadays have been told that they're never going to be able to afford a house. And I agree with that. I don't think that anybody under the age of 30 living in the fiat world is going to be able to buy their own house. It's just not possible anymore. But if you live in Bitcoin, if you save in Bitcoin, if you earn in Bitcoin, that flips everything on its head. You're absolutely going to be able to afford a house, the nicest house on the block, if you're living in Bitcoin. So that's the first one. The second part here, and I kind of mentioned this already, but is tenants. So with a rental house, you have tenants. They pay your bills. The idea with real estate is that you buy this house, you take on some debt, you buy this house, you charge rent. That rent amount is higher than your costs. And so you have to find people to live in that house. And the tenants part of that is a big one. So if you looked at a spreadsheet, and unfortunately I don't have one available here, but if you looked at a spreadsheet of a rental house, it would say rental income. That's how much your tenants are paying you. Then you have your property tax. Then you have your mortgage. Then you have your interest. Then you have your insurance. Then you have your landscaping. You have all these costs, and you have to set your rent high enough in order to make some money off of this. But what you don't include there, and what most people miss when they have rental homes, is your time. So if you have a rental house, you are the person who has to find tenants. You have to go through the trouble of sifting through their applications. You have to call them all. You have to call their references. If there's a lot of turnover, you have to do this quite often. So that's one aspect of it, is your time is not included in that profit and loss within real estate. And if you're somebody who values your time, that's a big part of it, right? That's a big part of it. And so looking for tenants, texting with your tenants, calling tenants, finding new tenants, all this kind of stuff takes so much time, and nobody works that into their profit and loss statement on their rental home. So you could have good tenants, you could have bad tenants, but you still have somebody on the other end of that that's totally out of your control, right? And so that's a problem. And that was kind of one of the main reasons why I actually sold my house in 2021, is because I saw what was happening. The government was printing money or taking on more debt, whatever you want to call it. They were just sending it out to people. People were quitting their jobs. People were just living off of the government. And I knew the costs were going to go up. So my costs were going to go up. The people living in these houses were leaving their jobs. They're getting totally reliant on the government. And who do you, oh, there's a fox in the yard. I should let Arnie go see him. Pretty cool. Anyways, where was I there? Government. So I saw two things happening at the same time. One of them is that people were leaving their jobs. They're going to have less income. They're going to be more reliant on the government. And with that, sorry, this fox is distracting me here. With that, what's going to happen? The government's probably going to start siding more with tenants. Tenants might not be able to pay their rent. And if you know any history between the landlord and tenant relationship, the government very much favors the tenant. And so if the tenant leaves their job, the stimulus checks stop showing up, all of a sudden they can't pay their rent. That's a big problem for me, because I still have to pay all of these costs every month. And if my tenant isn't making those payments, unfortunately, unless I go to court and have this huge legal battle with the tenant, there's not a whole lot that I can do. So I'm essentially going to be funding somebody else to live. And that scared the shit out of me. So that's a big one. You have to consider your time, and you have to consider what's going to happen here with UBI, with stimulus, with government control, all that kind of stuff. It's just not, I don't want to be in the middle of that. And I turned out to be not 100% right, but things have continued on that trend. And I think they're going to continue even further as we go along here. So the flexibility part here, just a sec. I want to text Bridge and let her know that there's a fox in the front yard. It's exciting times out here. Fuck. Sorry. Anyways, this is the kind of stuff you see on a live show. Oh, it's gone as soon as I texted. Anyways, so that's the first part, or the first two parts, the inflation, the tenants. And the next part here I want to talk about is flexibility. I kind of touched on this already, but think about if something were to go wrong in your country. All of a sudden, like I said, Trudeau gets another term. I'm very unhappy here. I don't love how much tax I'm paying, how much carbon tax. We're on our 10th carbon tax by that point. And I said, I'm out of here. I'm done with Canada. I want to start a new life somewhere else. And think about how hard that would be if you wanted to cash out all of your rental homes, even if you only had one. There's a very long process. You have to go through finding a buyer, hiring a realtor, finding a lawyer, the whole process of actually selling it and getting what you think it's worth, dealing with your tenants, all that kind of stuff. It's a huge hassle. Whereas with Bitcoin, on the flip side of that, you don't have any tenants. You don't have to worry about any of that bullshit. But at the same time, you can memorize your 12 words if you're very much distressed. I would probably just put my cold card into, not my butt, but somewhere, and the government might not know it's there, depending on who's at the border. But you can memorize 12 words there. It's possible to do. And I could leave Canada. So very flexible. That's what you want to be, especially in times like these. The next one here is the costs. The costs of everything. Johnny says, do the show with the window in the background so we can see cool things like that. Yeah, when it gets a little bit nicer outside, I might start doing shows on the deck in the morning and having some coffee out there. I just think that it'll be a nice, we'll call it a vibe, nice vibe. And we can see different things like that. It's not every day that the fox shows up though. So over in Zap.stream, we got some people on there. Love to see that. We had Jose zapped 121 sats for the fox. It was a healthy looking fox. He's keeping the mice away out here. Crypto Heathen says for 300,000 in 2015, you could have gotten about 900 Bitcoin instead of that house, worth $61 million today. So if I would have been a little bit more ahead of my time, I don't love talking about what ifs though, but that is a cool comparison. Thanks for that calculation, Crypto Heathen. I'm going to give him a little zap for that. That was a value add for the show. Oh, my fucking Alby's on. It's locked. Sorry, Crypto Heathen. I'll have to get you on nostr. Send you a little zap for that. Okay. So Nick over there says the carbon tax keep going up and we have to pay GST on it too. It's ridiculous. And that's what I want to talk about here. Everything. Think about this. And this is kind of what I foresaw back in 2021 when I sold the house, is that I knew interest rates were going to go up. They were talking about it. It wasn't a big secret. Interest rates were going to go up. So think back to what I was talking about there. You got your top line, your revenue. Underneath that, you have all of your costs. So you have your property tax, you have your electricity, you have your interest, you have your insurance. As all of those costs go up, you have to increase your rent by the same amount. And you can't do that. You can't do that because of the laws between landlord and tenant. So think about how much energy costs have gone up since 2015 when I bought the house, especially here in Canada with like 3 carbon taxes now. Think about how much property taxes have gone up since 2015. A couple months ago in this city that I own the rental house, they increased their property taxes by 25%. 25% in 1 year. So your energy goes up, your property tax goes up. Interest rates, I had a 1.5% mortgage on that time. Now all of a sudden, if I were to renew it, it would have been like 6 or 7% for the mortgage. So my energy's up, my property tax is up, my interest rates, they're all up. And you cannot increase the rent by that same proportional amount. So what happens? You become less profitable. There's probably some people out there with a rental house right now that are losing money every month. And they're thinking that just because they're paying down their mortgage, their principal portion of that mortgage, that they're going to somehow come out ahead of this whole thing. So that's kind of the monthly costs. But then you also have to think about if I did really well and I managed things properly, I was able to charge enough rent and I was making like $200 or $300 a month off this rental house. And I could build that up over 10 years and I'd be sitting on a pretty nice chunk of savings there, right? Then you think about this. All of a sudden you need a new roof for your house. And since 2015 to 2024, the cost of a new roof has pretty much doubled. Every single penny you made during those 10 years of finding tenants, of taking calls on Christmas Eve about your tenants, all this kind of stuff, over those 10 years, you built up this nice savings account. Now you have to go buy a new roof with that. Or a new water heater. Or a new deck. Or whatever that is. You never get ahead in the rental house. The only thing I would say about this is that if you are somebody who, has a bunch of rental homes, your family's passed it down, whatever that is, and you have like a team of people who actually manage this stuff for you, like property managers, like maintenance guys, bookkeeper, and you don't have to really do anything. You just sit there and take the checks every month. That is something where this is feasible. But if you're somebody like me who had one rental house and you were hoping to have this as a retirement when you get to that age, that's kind of like your nest egg. It's a very poor strategy. It's a very poor strategy for those reasons. So that's the other part. What else we got here? A couple more things, just kind of to round things out here to further drive home my point. Is number one, stress. If you have an old house, an old rental house, the house I had was a beautiful house, actually. It was probably 120 years old. It was red brick, beautiful house. But with old houses, shit goes wrong. Shit goes wrong a lot. And so I remember, I think it was Christmas Eve or New Year's Eve, and I was out at a party with my friends, and I got a phone call from a tenant saying that there was a water issue. The sink was backing up. And imagine like you're just having a good time. You're living your life. I was pretty young at this time, but you get a call like that. And you don't have a whole lot of nights like that, Christmas Eves, New Year's Eves. And all of a sudden it's been completely derailed by your tenant. Completely out of your control. Ruined your night and your week and probably your month. And you're going to have to take all the money that you've been making from this rental house and fix it. It's a lot of stress that comes with rental house. Lots of stress. Too much stress. Also liability. If your tenant slips, maybe you didn't de-ice the step, your tenant slips, cracks open their head. Even if you have a corporation, even if you have good insurance, there's still going to be some very negative implications of that. And that is totally out of your control. Bitcoin won't call you on New Year's Eve. Bitcoin won't slip and fall and crack their head open anytime. So there's lots of liability there too. Even if it's, like I said, in a corporation or you have really good insurance on it, there are still things that can go wrong in the rental game, liability wise. The next one here is drugs and crime. In cities where the majority of these rental homes are, think about the crime and all the drugs that are happening in those cities. And if all of a sudden you bought this beautiful 100-year-old house, a brick house, and this actually happened to me. You bought this nice house, and all of a sudden there's a couple houses, a couple people move in down the road, start selling heavy drugs. And then the next house beside them starts selling heavy drugs, and they're making these drugs in their house. And when you have houses like that, it attracts people. And all of a sudden, this nice little neighborhood that you had turns into a nightmare for your tenants. They moved in. They thought that they're, pretty close to a school, decent neighborhood. And all of a sudden, there's some drug houses that take over. That has a very negative impact on your tenants. They're probably going to move out. You're going to have to fight hard to find new tenants. All your costs are going up. All your costs are going up. So you're going to have to increase your rent to coincide with those costs. So even though your neighborhood has gotten shittier, you have to charge people more for the rent. All of these things happening at the same time is my literal nightmare. So, I would just love somebody to, and I'm sure that there are people out there who have rental homes, and I would love to hear a good argument in terms of why you would rather have a rental house deal with all this bullshit instead of owning Bitcoin. And then if you ever go to sell that, there's a worldwide market for Bitcoin. Most people get into real estate. They want to keep it for 10, 15 years, cash out. That's their retirement. Decent strategy. But if you look at all this stuff in behind the scenes there and how much our money supply is increasing, how much our debt is increasing, might not be that great. But at the same time, if you hold on to Bitcoin and you want to cash that out and retire, you have an entire worldwide market who's going to want to buy that Bitcoin. You don't have to find somebody to buy your drug house. You don't have to find anybody to buy it. You have a worldwide market who's going to buy your Bitcoin. BlackRock will probably buy your Bitcoin. And if you're smart, you will never sell that Bitcoin. You'll take on debt. You'll use it as collateral. Maybe you'll buy your own vacation home with that Bitcoin that you've accrued through the years. All of a sudden, you bought it back in 2024, 2034 rolls around, you're looking to retire. That the Bitcoin has gone up 100 times, let's say that, and you want to go take on some debt at the bank. Think about the bank's perspective here. Think about the bank's perspective here, and this is where I want to end it. So when you take on a loan at the bank, and historically farmers have been the ones who have really, Jose over in the Zap.stream chat says Bitcoin never cooks meth. It's funny, but it's really not funny. We're in a very sad spot right now in the world, and cities are getting worse and worse. So Nick said he used to pay $1,200 per year in property taxes in Calgary. Now he's at almost $3,000. That's significant for when you're trying to live, for one, but when you're trying to make money off of a rental house, that is significant. That's double, triple almost. I doubt that you can increase your rents by triple. So this is where I want to leave it. This is where I want to leave it because this is important. Farmers have mastered the strategy. They buy land. They never sell that land. They pass it on generations. They never sell the land. Every time they want to buy something, though, whether that is a vacation home, whether that's a new truck, they don't sell a sliver of their land to go buy it. They go to the bank, they take out a loan, and they use that land as collateral. Bitcoin is the 2024 version of land. It's the digital scarce land. So you do the exact same thing. You're never going to sell your Bitcoin. And because of that, the reason why I think that banks will actually be very friendly to Bitcoin lending is because from their perspective, when banks lend you money, they assess your risk. Are you going to be able to pay off the debt one day? Are you going to be able to make your payments on a monthly basis? If not, what do? they come and take your land. If you can't pay your loan payments, they come and take your land. So now the bank went through all this trouble. They seized your land. Now they have to sell this. They have to sell that land. They have to find a buyer. They have to find a realtor. They have to find a lawyer. It takes months to do. Maybe there's not a whole lot of demand. Maybe you're going away from land, but into real estate. Maybe your rental home has been consumed by crime, drugs, and all of a sudden they have a very hard time selling this house for what it's valued at on the mortgage. Flip that on its head and you got Bitcoin. You stop making your loan payments. They just take some of your Bitcoin. And are they going to have to hire a lawyer? Are they going to have to hire a realtor? Are they going to have to wait 3 months to sell it? Nope. They can flip it over the next day because there's a worldwide market for it and it's a very liquid asset class. So, I mean, it just makes sense. It just makes sense. And when things make sense, you go towards that. So, a couple things I want to end with here. We got some questions in the chat. I really didn't want this to be this long of a chat today, but it happens. There you go. Jason says, my accountant just suggested us to consider our city home before things really derail. If you are somebody who has a rental house right now, just think logically. Think logically. If your term's coming up here in Canada and all of a sudden you had a 2% mortgage and it goes to a 6 or 7% mortgage, what do you think is going to happen to the value of that house? When less people can afford homes, there's less demand. And when there's less demand, house prices fall. It's very simple. It's just that most people don't really take the time to think about it. Yeah, and Rock and Roll says, all that stress for your well-being, it takes a very negative impact on your life. Anytime you have stress in your life, it has a very, very negative impact on your life. Freedom Perspective, that's a new face in the chat. Real estate was the place to park our currency. Now I park my currency in Bitcoin and I park the Bitcoin in my head. That's a great comment. Bitcoin collateral introduced the possibility of self-repaying loans. I mean, if you look at the history of Bitcoin and how much the purchasing power has increased, about 150% annually, and you look at your rental home returns, I don't know what it would be, but it's getting lower. It's the housing prices will not continue to go up because less people will be able to afford it when interest rates are higher. Like I said, this isn't very hard to figure out. Bitcoin is digital monetary money. Bitcoin is digital land too. That's what I like to compare it to. Daniel over in Zap.stream says, converting a rental home into Bitcoin seems like a no-brainer. I would just love for somebody to have a viable, and maybe somebody in the comments, maybe a realtor. Actually, I forgot to start the whole show with this. This is what I wanted to start with. Where is this? Because this is what Google has to say about it. Let's just Google it instead of looking for that. Google versus rental home. Oh no, that's not what I wanted. Okay, where is this? Oh, yeah, we're I was going to do a Living in the Future show today, but we might have to bump it to tomorrow. This has gone on longer than I thought it was going to. So here is what I wanted to read you. This, when I Googled Bitcoin versus real estate or Bitcoin versus rental homes this morning, this is what it says on Google, the very first little blurb that they have there. The bottom line is that crypto, not Bitcoin, the bottom line is that crypto is a high-risk speculative investment. It could make you a millionaire, or it could implode, causing you to lose everything. Real estate, on the other hand, is the tried and true means of building wealth and comes with many benefits that crypto simply can't match. That's from Google. So when the average person, if somebody out there with a rental home types that into Google, maybe should I sell my rental home for Bitcoin? That's what they see. High risk speculative asset. It could implode, causing you to lose everything. Real estate, on the other hand, is the tried and true means of building wealth and comes with many benefits that crypto simply cannot match. And I think that that's where a lot of people live in that world still. So if you are somebody who has a rental home, I mean, I would love to hear a good argument on why you should keep a rental home over Bitcoin. I would love to hear an argument for that. If you're somebody who's watching this now, leave a comment in the YouTube channel and let me know why real estate, you think that holding a rental home is better than Bitcoin right now. I'm open to it. I'm very open to what people think about it. People get really emotional because they can see rental houses. They love being able to feel things in their hands. So they just completely ignore all the stuff that we talked about today. And it's sad. A lot of people are going to get very, very much burned from it in the future. So what I would say is that if you are somebody who has a rental home, you don't have to go list it today. But I do want you to take a very hard look at where you're at in your cycle in terms of what's your interest rate? Where are you in your term? Like, are you going to go from a 2% interest rate to a 7% interest rate in a year from now when your term comes up? If the answer to that is yes, you have to do a very in-depth look at what kind of impact that's going to have on your profit and loss, because you're going to be paying more interest and less of a premium on your, or less of principal on your mortgage. At the same time, also look at your capital costs. So your roof, when was your roof last replaced? Are you going to have to replace your roof in the next 5 years? And so if your mortgage is coming up, if your interest rate's going to go up and your roof's going to have to be replaced, probably is a very good time to be selling your rental home for Bitcoin. Plus, you also have to consider where we are in the Bitcoin cycle in terms of what's coming with the halving, what's coming when the grayscale runs out of Bitcoin, and what happens when the majority of financial advisors wake up to what's happening in Bitcoin here and start telling their clients to buy Bitcoin. So take a look at where you're at. If you, this is what I'm going to offer to you. Find a way to contact me. All the information is in the description below here. Find a way to contact me. Let me know what your situation is. I'll try to give my best idea or strategy for maybe how to proceed with that. I don't have any sort of real estate credentials or financial advisor credentials. I do work very close with a financial advisor, so I would definitely loop him on it in terms of tax planning for it. I was a CPA in my past life, so I do have some knowledge on that. But if you are somebody, this is my offer to you. Just shoot me an email in a one paragraph. Let me know what your situation is. And we can either set up a call. I can put you in touch with the financial advisor that I work with, and we can just determine the best strategy for you moving forward. Pretty simple. Pretty simple. A couple questions here. King, good morning, my friend. Rock and Roll says, have a great day, Bitcoiners. Keep stacking harder. We winning. We're not quite done yet, but that's a great comment. Nick says, I think rental houses make sense for people who travel to certain places often and may find it more beneficiary to own a home than renting. While going back and forth between their two homes, they can rent it out on Airbnb. Yeah, that makes sense. I agree with that. At the same time, I also think that because the real estate market is so inflated right now, and I don't think it's going to keep going up simply because of the interest rates, depending on what country you're in. In the US, because people have 30-year mortgages there, you're probably going to be okay for a while there. But I just don't love the idea of anything other than Bitcoin right now, even a vacation home. And I've talked my parents out of doing it, I think, for the most part. What's your opinion on the Bitcoin ETFs if we have funds and RSPs that limits exposure to Bitcoin? So like I was just talking about there, I do work very closely with a financial advisor. He's a great guy. He's one of the very, very few advisors that I've come across who are embracing Bitcoin. Instead of fighting it, instead of ignoring it, instead of just hoping that it goes away and having these bullshit conversations with their clients when they ask, this guy's actually embracing it. We've actually brought a few people. The number is growing, the number of people who have reached out to him from this community. And the Bitcoin ETF is part of that strategy. So we look at your whole situation. You're going to want some Bitcoin in self-custody. You're going to want some Bitcoin ETFs. You might even want some micro strategy. And with this fella, what we can do is take your assets from the old system, take your assets that you have sitting around like cash, and figure out the best way to put those, how to navigate that for taxes, for long-term strategy, for all that kind of stuff. We look at where you're at and then base a Bitcoin strategy off of that. So if you are somebody who has a bunch of assets in the old system and wants some exposure to Bitcoin, find a way to get a hold of me and we'll have a conversation. It's free. And I think that it can make a very big difference in a lot of people's lives who have a financial advisor who are completely ignoring Bitcoin right now. So that's that. Jose says, hey, Jor, how do we get in the Masters pool? I'm going to send out an email today. If you are somebody who is a golfer or you like watching golf, you're excited about the Masters that start tomorrow, we're doing a Bitcoin golf pool. You pay in sats, and if you pick the right team, you win sats. So find a way to get a hold of me if you are somebody who wants to be in this. The deadline is going to be tonight at midnight. All you have to do is pick 4 golfers. The highest combined earnings of those 4 golfers gets the Bitcoin. And we've done it for a couple tournaments now. And it's pretty sweet. You just send it over Lightning. There's no e-transfers. There's no names, any of that stuff. Just over Lightning. Daniel says 91 sats per VByte for the next block. Let's check this out. Holy. There you have it. The last block that was mined, the average was 74 sats per VByte. And we can see here, this one's buzzing. 3,800 transactions. And the average, I don't know what's going on over there. 95 sats per VByte. Let's see how things look here. So the miner who's going to mine this block has a total fee so far of approximately 1.03 Bitcoin. That's how much they're going to make. $70,000 just off of 1.04. So if you look at that, that's what this next miner is going to make from this block. And if we go back to this one, 2 blocks ago, the miner only made 0.3 of a Bitcoin from fees. The more you can understand Bitcoin, the more you can understand everything we're talking about here, the better off you're going to be in the future. Kieran says block space is cheap, exchanges will consolidate. I agree with that. I'm kind of under the opinion that fees will stay around the 20, 30 sats. They'll obviously jump like this. We've seen this block went to 95 sats per VByte. But over a year span, I think that the average of fees, transaction fees, are going to be around 20, 30 sats per VByte. And the reason I say that is because as Bitcoin gets more expensive, the dollar value, the dollar translation of that goes up as well. So as Bitcoin becomes more expensive, as block space becomes more scarce, it's going to cost more in fiat. But I mean, it's going to get to a point where people are just going to not transact on layer 1 if the fees are too high. So it's the perfect free market, supply and demand. There's limited block space. Everything about Bitcoin is beautiful. So we're going to leave it there. I apologize to the Living in the Future crew today. I was going to do a show today, but this one went 1 hour and 15 minutes. So we're going to do that tomorrow instead. But in the meantime, quickly before we go, I want to say thank you, everybody. We had a lot of viewers today in Zap.stream, 50 viewers at one point. So I'm guessing Kieran or the grinder over there tweeted about it or shared it. So big shout out to everybody on Zap.stream. Thank you to the people who have zapped. We're almost at our goal here of, where's the goal? I don't even know where it went. Anyways, pretty cool. If you haven't yet, watch yesterday's show, get onto Nostr, get onto Zap.stream. We are living in the future, and we're building some really cool things over in Living in the Future. You can find information on that in the description. It's a beautiful place. We had like 5 people join the chat yesterday. We are actually going to cap it. So this is an announcement, official announcement. We're going to cap the group chat, the Bitcoin group chat, after 44, and we're almost there. So if you are somebody who's kind of been on the fence about joining and becoming part of that, the founders over there, now would be the time to do it. You can click the link. I hate saying that. If you have any questions, if you want to join it, you can find everything that you need to know about me in the description, or you can contact me. And I'm very quick to respond, very flexible. And it's important. It's important. I wish that I would have had people to talk to when I was first getting into Bitcoin. It makes a big difference. So shout out to also Anon over in the Zap.stream, just Zap 50 sats. I appreciate everybody over there. Appreciate everybody there. I appreciate the people on YouTube for showing up every single morning. We're having a lot of fun here, and it's going to be a lot more fun over these next couple of years. So send this to anybody in your life with a rental house. If you have a rental house, send me an email. And with that, have the best day of your life. It is hump day, and we'll catch you right back here first thing tomorrow morning for the live Q&A, our favorite day of the week. Have a great day, everybody. We'll talk to you tomorrow morning. Bye-bye.